At some point, the Los Angeles Chargers will make superstar quarterback Justin Herbert the highest paid player in NFL history, and the sooner they get it done, the better.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. We've been covering the Chargers together now for 7 seasons, but this is our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making this your first listen today. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. And today we're getting into a Chargers mailbag, starting with one of the most important things of the offseason, getting Justin Herbert's contract extended. Nobody wants to see a Lamar Jackson situation play out in Los Angeles. Get it done, because the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost him. Pretty much no matter what, he's going to be the highest paid player in the NFL when he gets that deal done. Why wait for Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts and other guys to raise the market, especially when guys like Daniel Jones now are making $40 million a year? But we're also going to be getting into some of our draft preferences, right? Hoping that the Chargers potentially trade down, and also a do not draft list, someone that we do not want the Chargers to take with the 21st overall pick. And we're going to get into that, but it always, as you know, starts with Justin Herbert when you're talking about the Chargers, David, because he's the most important player. The Chargers got it right with the pick at 6th overall in 2020, and now is the first time they're allowed to give him that gigantic extension, right? The sooner you get it done, the better. But it goes to one of our first Twitter questions here from Ron Parker, who asked, do you think it's better to get Herbert's contract done before Burrow and Hurts? Doesn't matter. And I would say yes.
100,000% yes, it definitely matters. This is a situation to where you need to get this contract done as soon as possible, because the more contracts that get doled out to guys like Hurts and Burrow, that's just going to reset the market, and they're going to get paid. And Herbert's going to expect even more money, because that's the business side of the NFL. So the sooner you get that contract done, the better. You know, just set it and forget it. Get it done and don't worry about it anymore.
I mean, it's basically a blank check for me, and as long as they can get the deal done, the better. I mean, Patrick Mahomes' deal, right? Going 10 seasons and getting locked in at that price for the next 10 years with the salary cap going up every year. But yeah, I mean, you're already seeing kind of the trickle down economics of this quarterback market, because right now you're seeing guys like Daniel Jones get 40 plus million. You're seeing Geno Smith get 40 million. You're seeing Derek Carr get 35 plus million, right? If that's what the next tier down guys are going to make, it's going to explode at some point. And you don't want to, Joe Burrow to be like, I want 5 million a year more than Aaron Rodgers is getting right now, because he is really where the current watermark is in the NFL at 50 point something million a season. We're at that point, $50 million quarterbacks. You don't want to wait for that. And I think really, I mean, the numbers probably won't change too much, right? If Herbert goes first, Hurts maybe signs for a little bit more. Burrow maybe signs for a little bit more, right? All of them are making probably 50 plus million in this next extension. And you just don't want to see it get to a messy situation like the one we've seen play out elsewhere. That leads to the next question from Mac Huber, who asked, when do you think Justin Herbert extension will be done, and what will it be? The Lamar Jackson situation has me a bit worried about it, because I know Herbert is a better quarterback than Jackson. So will he ask for a fully guaranteed contract? Thanks, guys. Love the show. Thank you, Mac. So I don't understand the Lamar Jackson situation. I think the fact that a 26-year-old MVP is out there, even with the way that the last 2 seasons have ended, with how bad some of the quarterbacks in the NFL are, somebody would be willing to do it, and we'll see, right? Because they have a chance to try to sign him, give up 2 first-round picks for him, because he is on that non-exclusive franchise tag going into next year. The quarterback fully guaranteed contract is something that we haven't heard the end of, right? Because Deshaun Watson messed everything up for everyone, right? Because he was in a situation where he had so many teams bidding for him. I thank God we're not in that situation. I can't imagine having to root for and talk about that dude on the show. But
No.
when you get that fully guaranteed contract like that, it's something where the rest of the league now, David, call it collusion, call it what you want. They're not going to want that to keep playing out.
Absolutely not, because one of the tools that you have at your disposal to manipulate cap hits is being able to manipulate the contracts to where you don't have to have all of the money being put on the salary cap. It's just not something that you can really put up with, and that's why you see all of these teams saying, "Hey, we're like basically saying we're not doing this guaranteed contract thing. It's just not going to happen. We can't do business that way." And obviously they're not going to want to. I mean, this isn't Major League Baseball, right? Where all the contracts are guaranteed. No, there is
Yeah.
ways that you can manipulate the cap, and you can kind of do things with the contract. That's why this guaranteed contract thing, I think it might be a one and done type of situation.
And maybe it gets to that point, right? I mean, NFL teams, really every contract should be guaranteed, especially with what all these players are going through. And I get it because they're 53-man rosters. So I
Yeah.
understand owners who don't become billionaires on accident, right, are trying to hold off against that like the plague. You're not allowed to collude. Seems like how many teams, especially quarterback needy teams, have been out there saying we're not interested in Lamar Jackson. It feels like something's going on there, and it makes sense for these owners to try to push back on these fully guaranteed contracts. I think at the end of the day, a huge portion of it's going to be guaranteed, and for someone like quarterbacks, like I can't see anything Justin Herbert could do in these next few years that would make him not, live out this full contract if it is like a 5-year deal, right? Like you have the guy, the skill is there. You're not going to be able to get a quarterback of that caliber. First of all, most teams go years without getting that. Second of all, once you have it, I mean, you're not going to find another top tier guy, right? With Justin Herbert, you're not be getting top 5 overall picks or anything like that. So it just makes all the sense in the world. Give him that. If he wants it fully guaranteed, it'd be fine with me. He's going to get all that money anyways, right? I don't necessarily seeing it happen like that. But Bill Barnwell did put out a projected contract extension when he was going into what can improve each team in the NFL on ESPN. And they said this is what the deal would basically be, David. 5 years, $251 million extension, which doesn't kick in until 2025. That's the important part, right? Because the Chargers will pick up his 5th year option. So the extension doesn't start until 2025. So you're going off of that season, would lock him up through 2029 in this situation. $120 million over the first 3 seasons, right? That's where he's getting a lot of that cash guaranteed up front, but keeping pretty manageable salary cap hits, which I think is the important thing. I think this is pretty realistic as to what it could be, at least close to this.
Yeah, and like this is one of those examples of being able to use the contract to kind of manipulate the cap hit. He has a signing bonus of 10 million basically spread over the the life of the contract. You have a roster bonus built into that as well, and then you're able to keep those cap hits from going to the astronomical level right away. You see in 2023 22 million, 2024 34 million, and then it kind of just jumps up from there 40, 45, 48. So this is
When it's important to
structured
know too that the next 2 seasons are already in stone, right?
right.
1 year, they're all part of his rookie contract. So the extension money, the reason it jumps up in 2025 is because that's when the extension starts.
Right, absolutely. But I mean, having it kind of structured this way allows the Chargers to have some wiggle room while accommodating a monster contract.
Yeah, and let's be honest, Justin Herbert's a top 4 quarterback, and he might not even be 4.
Yeah,
There's probably some semantics up top, man. Any kind of combination of Mahomes, Burrow,
of course.
Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. That's basically, Mahomes in a tier by himself.
Sure.
Justin Herbert in that next tier down. The Chargers are incredibly fortunate. Give him a blank check, give him whatever he wants, get him signed on the dotted line. You don't want to see this drag out. And unfortunately, the Chargers, who have at least, even though Tom Telesco hasn't given out a ton of second contracts to his drafted players, the big time ones under Telesco have been paid. The Joey Bosa's, the
Very
Keenan
well.
Allens, the
Yeah.
Derwin James, and they all
Yeah.
got paid at the top of the market, resetting the market in the cases of Derwin James and Joey Bosa, made the highest paid players at their position in the league, highest paid players at their position all time. So he hasn't shown, a hesitancy to do that, right? He hasn't been shy about doing it, but those deals ended up happening like on the verge of training
Yeah.
camp. Like
Very late.
the
Yeah.
biggest difference between Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson's about to be a free agent right now if
Yeah.
they don't get this done. He's a free agent. I mean, now he's tagged, but like Justin Herbert, even if they don't do anything right now, will be under contract at least through 2025. Do you want to let it get there? No, you absolutely
No.
do not. Get it
No.
done. Give him the pen. Doesn't seem like the type that's not, he's not going to take a team friendly deal. Let's cut that out. The NFLPA won't let it happen. It just means there's too many different ramifications that come from that. He's going to get set at the top of the market. Give it to him. I don't think he's going to fuss very much. Doesn't seem like that type of player.
No.
And he'll get it done and hopefully be, with the Chargers for his entire career, but at least the immediate future, right? The next 5 to 7 years in this case. Get it done. And no reason to wait because the price is only going up. But we do have more to get into in this Chargers mailbag, more great questions, including, do we think this is the year Tom Telesco finally trades down? He's never done it. I feel like this year, though, it seems a little bit more likely. Maybe that's just me being hopefully optimistic. And we'll also talk about the do not draft list, a player we do not want to see the Chargers draft with pick 21 in the first round. We're going to get into that, but I do need to tell you guys that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official betting sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. And right now, guys, it's the midway point of the NBA season. And right now, it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. That means you can lose and still win, which is the best way to lose, is to also be able to make money off of that loss. All you have to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use, and you can bet on everything from the money line, point scores, how many threes a player is going to make. And if you really want to get wacky, if you want to go crazy, they have a lot of fun, kind of quirky bets as well. You can go with the 2x3, 2 3-pointers made in the first 3 minutes and multiply your winnings. So make sure you guys download the FanDuel app and don't miss your chance to get that no sweat first bet up to $1,000 and bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. We have more Chargers mailbag questions to get into, including this one, which I like, from K-Man, who asks, what are the chances that you think that Tom Telesco will trade down for the first time for an extra pick in the draft? I really, really like that idea this season. Me too. I love that idea. Do it, Tom, if you don't mind. David, to me, I think especially, we're going to talk about this later on, as far as the parts that we don't know about free agency yet, and the re-signings that have to happen that'll kind of put more into perspective what the Chargers really, really need going into the draft. But I think when you're looking at pick 21, the no doubt about it prospect's probably not going to be there, right? Maybe somebody slides at the consensus like top 10, top 15 pick maybe. But more than likely, you're going to be stuck with kind of an amorphous blob of guys that maybe you don't have a first round pick on, right? And in that scenario, I hope that they trade down. Tom Telesco hasn't done it, but if you can get another, needing what they need, right? Not many starters. You need a lot of depth pieces. You need a lot of quality depth. Getting an extra top 100 pick is something I'd be very intrigued by.
Definitely. Obviously, the first thing we got to talk about here is the fact that it's never happened before. Tom Telesco has never traded down ever before as the general manager of the Chargers. Yes, he has traded up multiple times, but never traded down. Although there's been some comments that have come out from him recently that kind of suggest subliminally that it might be a possibility of him trading down this
When he was
season.
talking about his picks, he said 7 or 8 picks when he was talking at the combine on one radio show. And it was just like, well, why would you let that slip?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, Tom Telesco is not a guy that says things without intention. He's very, very intentional about what he says.
But it feels
usually,
like almost that would hurt his leverage, right? Because
yeah,
you would want anyone you're trading, who's trying to trade up with you, to think, I need to keep this pick. This
of
pick is
course.
very important to me, right? So I don't know. I mean, everything's smoke and mirrors. And if everything's smoke and mirrors, you can't really take anything to heart.
But no, I agree with you, though, honestly. I feel like this is a draft where, especially where you're at the back end of the first round, there might not be a player that you're just completely enamored with. So if you have an opportunity where somebody really needs to grab a position of need and they need to make that deal, make it. Make that deal, trade down, acquire another pick, get yourself another opportunity to grab somebody that can make an impact within that top 100. I think that would be an ideal situation for the Chargers.
Yeah, because I feel like there's a lot of guys you feel pretty good about, but there's a lot of guys as well where you're looking at it and you're like, I just don't know if I'd pull the trigger on that specifically with the 21st overall pick. Like, it's just,
you're just like, I just don't feel great about it. There's a lot of those guys. Yeah.
And a lot of those guys would feel a lot better if they were like the 28th pick.
Absolutely.
The 29th pick, something along those lines. But that kind of goes to our next voicemail that we have here. So let's get into this from Kirk in Eagle, Nebraska. Let's see what he has to say.
Hey, this is Kirk, longtime fan of Eagle, Nebraska. I appreciate you guys and what you do. I'm a Chargers fan in the heart of Chiefs country and an Iowa Hawkeye fan in the heart of Nebraska Cornhusker country. So got that going for me. But my question for you is this. Is there any one player in this year's draft that just scares you, that you absolutely don't want the Chargers to draft? Just be curious what your thoughts are. And yeah, thanks. Have a great day.
That's a tough geographical situation for sure. It kind of reminds me of like Deuce from Vegas, who's called in a bunch of times too. He's now in the middle of Raiders territory, right? As a Chargers fan, I know we have some Broncos country people that are in Denver that root for the Chargers as well. Tough situation, right? I mean, I live in San Diego, but no opposing teams here, obviously. But I think it's a good question, David. And really, the only guys we can go off at this point are the guys that we've watched so far.
Correct. Yeah, we can't sit here and give you a full evaluation on all these guys because we haven't watched all these guys. So based off of
57 people that are going to be drafted, this is the guy they better not pick.
exactly. So just based off of the guys that we've watched, I think one of the guys that I really want the Chargers to stay away from is one of the guys we recently reviewed, and that's Lucas Van Ness. I just feel like he's a guy that has too many kind of red flags for me at the 21st overall pick. He's a guy that ends up on the ground way too much for a guy of his size. Has that prototypical size, 6'5", 280, but it just seems like he needs to identify blocks better. He's just a guy that would really scare me if he was there and the Chargers took him. I would not be very happy at all.
Yeah, I would say the same for the guys that, will realistically be first round picks, right? Taking out the Tuli Pelotus of the world and
right.
Darnell Washington, maybe he's a first round pick, right? But not talking about those guys. Lucas Van Ness is definitely a guy where I haven't really understood the hype.
Yeah.
Could say, running back also fits that more positionally, right? What positions you wouldn't want them to take. Feels like corner is not something that need-wise would be a first-round pick, but something that feels very possible from Brandon Staley. And depending on who it is, maybe I can get behind it if it's just someone you feel great about. But there's certain positions, like running back outside of Bijan Robinson is something I don't want to see in the first round. And even that, it's hard for me to say take a running back in the first round. Safety is not something I want to see them take in the first round, right? So for me, it's more positions. If they take a quarterback in the first round, no, I'm just kidding. But let's get to the next question here from John Hills, who says, David and Daniel, love the show. My son and I listen every day with the challenges the Chargers had running the ball last season, 30th in yards per game, and the success they had in the passing game, 4th in yards per game. Why isn't there more buzz about taking Bijan Robinson? I think it's a couple of things, David. I think the main things, though, are getting a great running back doesn't automatically make your running game good. Probably, it improves it for sure, but there's so much more to it. And I think the other thing is how many people think Bijan Robinson's making it to the 21st pick.
That was going to be my first thing. Is there's no real reason why you can be confident that he is actually going to be available at the 21st overall pick, because he's probably the consensus number one running back in the draft. So
I'd have to think so. Yeah.
He's a very special player. And also, just considering the team needs that the Chargers have, if they take a running back in the first round, that would really be considered a luxury pick. And I don't know if the Chargers are in a position with, the importance of the needs that they have to address, that would be the right move to make. I definitely feel like there would be some outrage. I've already said that you definitely have to consider it because he's a guy that could transform things for you on offense. But, it's not just him. You got to have the running system set up. You got to have the offensive line dialed in and ready to go to open up holes for you. And also you have to consider who's playing quarterback for you. The Chargers are never going to be a 50-50 balanced team. They are always going to be a pass first team. So I just don't know if that's the best use of your assets, taking a running back in the first round.
The reason is people don't like taking running backs in the first round as a philosophy, right? So if it's just against your philosophy in general, for sure. I mean, is he a generational type of prospect? He's probably borderline, right?
Sure.
Like with the Saquon Barkleys and the, Adrian Peterson's other guys who have come out, he's probably in that class. And at the same time, I think we're at the point where you're saying consider it, but you're also not banging on the table to say, hey, if Bijan Robinson's on the board, you take him no matter who's around him.
Right.
Could you make the argument he's the best player on the board at the 21st overall pick? Potentially, right? Depending on who's there at the time. But I think a lot of it's also how much are you blaming Austin Eckler for the Chargers' bad running game? And for me, I'm not.
No.
It much more comes down to having a consistent offensive line out there, having the same group of guys, getting that chemistry out there, having better blocking from your tight ends and your wide receivers, both of which were lacking last season. I think there's so many things that go into the running game. I think that's why it's not just an obvious thing. Hey, Chargers 30th in rush yards per game. First of all, they had, some of the fewest attempts in the league last year. Not at the very bottom, but they weren't running it nearly as much as they were throwing it. And the other thing is just one guy doesn't automatically make you a great rushing team. Maybe if you're a quarterback, maybe you go get Anthony Richardson, you're a good rushing team just because, having that at that position.
Yeah.
But I think that's why you're not seeing more people just banging their drums and planting their, flag on that hill of take Bijan Robinson, number 21, unless you're Brian Rick, who seems like he has planted that flag. So we do have more fan questions that we want to get into in this Chargers mailbag coming up right after this, talking about how the Chargers are going to address the offensive line in free agency, right? And what the draft priorities are at this point, considering we haven't seen who the Chargers are going to re-sign. We have a great question to open up this year, David, with fan since 1999, Chino, aka on Twitter, who asks, post-combine, what are the realistic draft priorities for the Chargers? Is it still the same, or do we have to wait until we re-sign the players that they're going to end up re-signing? So this is a good question, David, because that is kind of shouting into a void at some point, yelling about what the needs are and what you're going to draft in the draft, because it becomes with a certain expectation of who you think the Chargers are going to re-sign, right? Because, hey,
Right.
Trey Pipkins doesn't re-sign. Guess what? You have a gigantic need at right tackle. And now it's like, okay, maybe the first round pick is going towards that, right? Unless you're moving Jamari Sawyer over there, you feel like you can get a guard later on to come start there. But it doesn't help things out. I think post-combine, if anything, the combine showed you, hey, if you don't get a receiver in round one, there's definitely some speed threats out there maybe you can get later on. Doesn't change really what the Chargers' needs are at this point. But I do think that's a great point as far as just not knowing what the biggest needs are at this point, because we haven't seen who they're bringing back yet.
No, yeah, definitely. I think for the combine is just a piece of the puzzle. I mean, it's one of the parts of the evaluation, but yeah, you don't really know what exactly your needs are going to be, immediate needs wise, at least until the free agency dominoes start to fall. Then your picture is going to start coming into clearer and clearer focus, and you'll be able to understand what the priority is. Because like you said, I mean, if Trey walks, then you got to fill that immediately.
Or Drew Tranquill, right?
And there's nobody on the roster that can replace that. Drew Tranquill, same situation. There's nobody on the roster that can replace that production. So you have to go do it, whether it's free agency or the draft. But free agency is going to show us what kind of where they're heading and what they're trying to address. And then, we'll know exactly we'll know what we think they are going to be taking in the draft, because obviously we're not always right about everything.
What? No, I mean, the funny thing is, I got a little lost there when you were talking, just because I was thinking, can Jamari Sawyer replace what Trey Pipkins did? Maybe, but it opens up another hole, right?
Yes,
that's the biggest thing, right? Like, at least if you sign Trey Pipkins, okay, I have my 5 starting guys in place. Slide Jamari Sawyer in.
Well, what do you think you can replace easier, a tackle or a guard? I mean, that's the.
Guard is definitely easier.
Yeah,
I mean, for sure, but at the same time, though, if you're going to move Jamari Sawyer to right tackle, you could definitely find a cheaper guard, say an Ode Abushi, right?
Yeah.
Someone like that. But then you're still going to have to find their backups because right now at this point, David, the only backup that we know for sure is going to be on the roster this year, do you know who it is? Brendan
Hymus.
Yeah, which hard to feel great about that, which leads us to bolt up Andrew's question here. And he asks, if you could choose one, would you rather address O-line depth during free agency by signing developed veterans who may be older, or from the draft with young guys who are inexperienced but can be developed? This is tough, right? Because, I mean, if you're, it's going to have to be both, because you don't really feel good about either. But if you had to say one, it would probably be the draft. And I'm not including, Trey Pipkins as someone that you're bringing in as like a veteran free agent, right?
Right.
Assuming Trey Pipkins is re-signed at right tackle.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to be able to afford it, because you just spent money on a tackle in free agency and Trey Pipkins. The other thing is there's just too many spots, because right now it's like Foster Sarell, right? Or Foster Sarell at right tackle, or as your swing tackle, which is terrifying.
Right.
And then also, nobody that you feel good about a backup center, with Will Clapp out of this, picture now, and him having ties to Joe Lombardi, but they also have Brendan Nugent. So it's not necessarily a total divorce from what he was doing before. But maybe that doesn't fit, what Kellen Moore wants in his backup. We don't know. I think the best situation is, hopefully, if you are going to spend a draft pick on it, if you're going to spend somebody on it, hopefully you get maybe some guard center, versatility there, where you can get one guy who can hopefully develop into a guy who can fill multiple roles for you, because there's so many question marks.
No, the answer is definitely both. I mean, I think you have to do it
But
that
if you
way.
could choose one, David, choosing one is part of the question.
All right, Daniel, fine. Well, if I have to choose one, it's definitely going to be through the draft, which I feel like the concentration of making that a priority of investing in the spine of your team has definitely come to the forefront with Brandon Staley as the head coach. You know, he's drafted guys on the defensive line, he's signed guys on the offensive line, brought guys in for that purpose. I feel like that's going to be something that's going to continue on. And that's what I want to see. So continue drafting guys, continue bringing them in to develop so you can see what, can come out of that.
And we know that, starting left tackle sometimes can be selected in the 6th round. So anything can happen there. Yeah, don't hold your breath on anyone coming close to the value the Chargers are getting out of Jamari Sawyer now, right? Because
Ever.
that is a true home run. And
Diamond
I
in the
mean, it
rough right there.
takes
That's exactly what that
some
is.
medical concerns or something like that. Trey Smith is another guy, medical concerns, goes to the Chiefs and has been outstanding for them.
Balled out. Yeah.
Yeah, and just super cheap. That's great. But I think, I mean, it is both, and it's going to have to be both. Maybe it's a combination of, hey, you bring in someone like Ode Ibushi, right, and you draft a backup center who maybe has some guard flexibility to it.
Yep.
But that's still a dart throw, right? Because, I mean, Brendan Hymus was brought in similar situation, too, to try to develop, and he hasn't so far. And he's a really big question mark who they have not been willing to put into games, right? But we do have a voicemail I do want to get into here. A lighter question about some games we're looking forward to in 2023. Let's hear what Atir has for us.
Dan, David, this is Atir. Question time. Looking at the schedule next year, give me one road game, one home game that you are excited to play next season. Mine, Bills, and Vikings. Let me hear you, please.
Answer time. No, I'm just kidding. I love Atir. Never stop calling in Atir. Good question, because we don't know what the schedule is, specifically next year as far as when they're going to play, the teams are going to play, but we do know the opponents are going to have. So let's go home and away here, David, like Atir is doing. And what are the 2 games you're looking forward to most?
Yeah, starting with the home game, I think this one's just because all of my in-laws are here in Texas and from Texas, so I think it's an easy one for me to pick the Cowboys as the home game I'm looking forward to, because I would love nothing more than to beat the Cowboys and have bragging rights until the next time they play each other. And then,
of course,
the road game, I think it's just awesome whenever you get a chance to go to Lambeau Field. It's one of those iconic type of fields. I mean, yeah, but I mean, hey, man, it's just one of those iconic
2 good
stadiums.
ones too, right? I mean,
yeah, of course,
another part of it.
And the Chargers don't ever, they don't get to go there very often. So when they do, it's kind of a special type of situation. So yeah, I think those are the 2 for me.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, with the Cowboys, everyone has a Cowboys friend that's annoying, right? And I mean, Kellen Moore, revenge game against Mike McCarthy, a lot of things in storylines to look forward to. Even in the Packers game, right? You have potentially Jordan Love versus Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Jordan Love, a.k.a. the man that a lot of Chargers fans wanted even over Justin Herbert way back. We don't have to talk about that. It wasn't me. I was a Tua guy, but I was not a Jordan Love guy. So
yeah, same.
Those are good picks. So I mean, how can you not look forward to the Bills game, right? I mean, Josh Allen versus Justin Herbert,
the 2 rocket arm quarterbacks.
Freakish.
Yeah.
I mean, not even just rocket arm, just the builds of those dudes and how athletic they are is just incredibly rare. You don't see it very often, and I think that's just a showcase of that. And the Vikings, it seems like, the Vikings have had the Chargers number. If they could pull that one off.
For real, man.
Yeah, and it's going to be very interesting to see kind of the coming back to earth of that team, who's having to cut a lot of very, very important players as well, right? So
yes,
those are both interesting. My wife is like a fake Packers fan, so that has it as well for me. She was like a Packers fan before. Now she's a Chargers fan.
Of course.
If I put her on the spot, she'd probably say Chargers. But I tried to be a Packers fan actually for a second. Long story, but they won a playoff game. Felt great. They lost a playoff game. I felt nothing, which is, how the Chargers basically won me back is just because of the pain that they inflict after losses somehow in some sicko way. But I do think with those games, though, you're getting, some really, really good storylines. And I mean, just looking at the Chargers schedule, it's going to be a toughie.
Oh yeah.
Even a team like the Lions, right? That's a team that,
they're
the
a
Chargers,
sneaky good team. They're a team on the rise for sure.
And a team that runs the ball exceptionally well, right? Like they're a unit, they're a house in that perspective. So I think those are the reasons. And also, Packers, just to shove it in Blake's dad's face. Donnie, I'm looking at you. I saw you change that profile picture to the Packers. You're waffling around. I see you out there.
We're monitoring you.
Pick a side, buddy. You didn't ask any questions today. Full-blown Packers fan now, I guess. No, I'm just playing. But yeah, a lot of really, really good games to look forward to. I mean, the Chargers are going to have to be much better, I think, than they were last season to make the playoffs in 2023.
That's right.
It's just, I mean, especially, not knowing what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers could be on the Jets. That's a very, very good team if that happens, right? Raiders, I mean, they're probably coming back down to earth a little bit. I'm not super scared of them, but now you have Sean Payton in the division now too.
Yeah.
Plus all of the great quarterbacks because the NFC has nobody, right? Especially if Aaron Rodgers leaves and goes to the AFC. Who is the best quarterback in the NFC at that point, right?
Geno Smith?
No, God, no. I mean, it's probably Dak, right? Derek Carr somehow is up there.
Yeah,
like in the probably top 5. It's a crazy world over there. But a much easier path, I think, to the Super Bowl, especially with guys like Tom Brady bouncing out. I mean, Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. Yeah, Jalen Hurts.
He's probably the best. He's the best. Yeah. Best quarterback in the NFC, at least who I would want right now the most. But hey, maybe Lamar Jackson goes to the NFC, right?
You never know.
MVP version of Jalen Hurts in some way. Jalen Hurts probably had a decent case for it this year as well. Oh, I mean, that 2020 quarterback class, man. If Tua can keep playing, Jordan Love's about to get the reins in Green Bay, man. That's crazy. And it's crazy because Phillip Rivers was also in a legendary quarterback class of his own with,
that's exactly what I was about to say.
Eli Manning. It's crazy. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. Thank you to everyone who hit us up at LockedOnLAC on Twitter and got your questions in there. Thanks to everyone who called into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. The reason we have this show today is because we will not be having a show tomorrow. David Ash is going out of town for a celebration of life, coming to San Diego. So some things can't be avoided, and happy that he gets to kind of spend time with his family there. So we will be back with you guys on Monday. If something crazy drops today, the day you guys are hearing this, I'll make sure that I'm on here to cover it in some way, right? But probably going to be back with you guys on Monday with our last free agent primer with all of the moves the Chargers have to make this weekend to get into compliance with the NFL salary cap, because right now they're still way over. By then, we should know some restructurings, some cuts. We'll have a much better idea of it. To make sure you don't miss it, though, subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free on all platforms, wherever you get your podcast from. And you can also find the show every day on all of our social media. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David Drogmeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD. His DMs are always open. You can also find us at Locked On Chargers on Instagram and on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page as well. Thank you guys, as always, for making this your first listen today. Love always when you guys are saying, hey, you guys are my first listen. It just really, really keeps us going. But if you need a second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Guys, we're going to have on the show at some point, providing in-depth coverage of the biggest NFL draft prospects and finding that sleeper, right? That hidden gem that could change your team's franchise forever. Maybe the Chargers find another one this year. We have to hope so, because they need some contributors. But that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back with you guys on Monday, more than likely. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.